All right, how's everybody doing tonight? If someone could just give me a shout out in the chat to let me know that you can hear me, that would be greatly appreciated. I am just going to do a random live stream because I've been not trying to ignore the chat over the last couple of weeks, but it just turned out that, I've had so many things to talk about and being on other screens that I haven't got to pay a whole lot of attention to the chat. Thank you very much, George. You can hear me. Sounds great. That's just great because, as I always say, I'm always afraid of the fact that, as I did probably about 3 years ago now, did an entire live stream when I didn't add myself to the stream, and all I did was talk for an hour and a half and didn't realize the people in the chat were yelling at me saying, what's going on? Where are you? So yeah, thank you very much for everybody for showing up. We got 12 people in the chat already. Let's give a shout out to everybody who's here. Vaz is here. I see Jewel here. Pedro is here. George is here, of course. The Jug Bug is here. We got Michael in the chat. Let's see. Pedro's here. We got a lot of regulars here. So if anybody is wondering what the trailer at the first of the stream was, that's the new books from my comic company coming out. They're called Fade to Blue. It is, as I just was telling John over John's Longbox, where I was streaming. That's why I'm a little late. It is Indiana Jones as if it was told in a film noir style. Now, I know that is a contradiction in terms because you have Indiana Jones, which has supernatural elements to it, and film noir is not supposed to have supernatural elements to it. But that's the fun of putting those two things together, if you ask me. So we're working on, I was going to put it out before this, but right now there is a link in the description just for the sign up page. We haven't put it out yet. You can go there and watch that trailer again if you want and see a little bit more art for these on the sign up page. And you can leave your email address if you want, and that way you'll be informed via email when the project goes live. Because basically, I was going to put it out in floppy format or digital format only. Not entirely sure yet exactly the restrictions of what I'm going to do with it, but we finished two of the floppies, which were, I think, 24 pages each, and we're almost more than halfway done with the third. So I thought, might as well wait until we get the third done. Wait until we get the third done. I have 3 books ready to go, and then put them out at the same time, and you can get them as soon as you possibly want them. If I'm going to do them printed wise, you can order them right away, and they'll be available digitally as the main tier, basically. Because everybody has said to me from the beginning of me putting out comics, RJ, can you put out something digital just so we can read it? Because, paying $25 for an 80 to 85 page graphic novel is great and all, but then you pay the shipping and handling and all that kind of stuff, depending on where you are in the world. It gets to be a fairly hefty bill. Anyways, I usually just talk about a random subject that has to do with making great comics. But again, I want to give the chat a little more leeway today, and I might talk a little bit about some of the things John and I were talking about in his live stream. Although that being said, let me give you, let's see, the latest image that I have for Fade to Blue. That this is art that just came in. If it will, hold on one second. Again, with my Amish levels of technical skill here, see if it'll upload correctly. See, and it won't share. Let's see. Oh, I was trying to use the large TIFF instead of the small JPEG that I usually use for my nope, it's still not going to load. It's going to show you new stuff from Fade to Blue, but it's not going to load. Anyways, I'll see if I can get some more Fade to Blue stuff up in a little bit. Let's just go through the chat. Anybody has any questions at all about any of my videos that I usually do on Saturdays? I usually do a more serious video on Saturdays, and then I just talk about fun things on Wednesdays, either with John or with you in the chat. So if you have any questions at all, put them in the chat, and I will try to get to everyone's question before the chat is over. And if you can put a question mark or tag me in it, just to let me know that you're talking to me and not cross-talking in the chat, that'd be great. So let's see what we got here. George asked the question already. George says, anyone else see the new Mission Impossible movie? Yes, George. I went to see it on Wednesday, and I think that's what I went to see it on last Saturday night. When I already put out my Saturday video. I think I'm going to do a video on that movie for my next Saturday video, just because reasons. I'm try. I went to see it and I was shaking my head. I was like, okay, it wasn't bad. I won't call it. I think it's probably the worst of all the Mission Impossible movies. But yeah, I mean, it's not ultimately terrible, but the agenda-driven stuff has just been driven underground. That's why I want to cover that. Let's see. We'll scroll down, see if anybody else has any questions. Let's see. Got to the point where people tell me they can hear me. Let's see if anybody else. Chugbug says, have you read any new comics? No, I haven't read any new comics. Unfortunately, no. Besides, let's say, indie comics is what I buy and read right now. So new comics, no, I haven't read any new comics. Partly because my local comic shop went belly up about a year and a half ago, probably about 2 years ago now. So it's actually difficult to find comics here. Anyways, Zach Tan is here, raiding over from John's Longbox. Zach Tan had said when we were in the chat for John's comic book team up that we're doing an hour ago that he liked my character Pulse. I wonder if I have a picture of Pulse here somewhere. Let me see. Again, I apologize for the amount of dead air that you have to put up with when dealing with me. I'm going to see if I have a picture of Pulse anywhere here in my backgrounds. I don't think so. I got a lot of other characters that I usually like. There's one of my top tier characters, I would say, which is Cardinal. Let's see. Let's go back. Okay, so, but yes, Zach Dan was saying that he likes Pulse. Pulse is one of my characters that I absolutely love. I would say besides Thomas Valiant, that would be the character that I created that I really like. And he was inspired by an old issue of X-Men. Basically, it was, I don't have a picture of it right off the top of my head. Let me see. I have cover browser open in another tab, so I'll go see if I can find this cover for you. An old issue of X-Men, which was done by Barry Windsor Smith. Let's see, Uncanny X-Men. It's probably around issue 300. Nope. 249. Let's try that. And I'll pull it up on screen for you. Scrolling down in a different screen. I apologize for the dead imagery. Let's see. Nope. Oh, there we go. Found it. Give me 2 seconds here to share that screen. And we'll look at cover browser for a minute. Uncanny X-Men. Okay. So yes, Uncanny X-Men number 205, which is this beautiful Barry Windsor Smith comic, which is basically a Wolverine standalone comic. If I remember correctly, it has Spiral in it and Lady Deathstrike. I think it might be the origin of Lady Deathstrike. Anyways, so I came up with a story based on that. Basically, the character of Pulse that I came up with was a character that came out of basically this story, although it doesn't really have a whole lot to do with this story. It morphed into something else because, as I usually do, I take two characters and I smush them together, and then I make a unique character that way and then rewrite the backstory and all that kind of stuff. But my inspiration was X-Men 205, and I want to actually do a floppy of Pulse at some point, which is going to be in the Barry Windsor Smith, let's say Lady Deathstrike kind of a vein, because it's just an homage to that, really, quite honestly. All right, so let's remove that and we'll put Cardinal back up on screen. Nope. Let's see here. There we go. What else we got? We got Manny's in the chat. How you doing? Vaz, as I said, is here. Vaz says, I read the new Superman Unlimited by Dan Slott. It wasn't awful, but it wasn't good. Honestly, Vaz, that's the exact same way I felt about the new Mission Impossible movie. It's like, it's not awful, but it's not good. I mean, for today's standards, it's good. From the standards of Mission Impossible that came out, I don't know, 1996, it's awful. from Mission Impossible #1. Now it's making a lot of money, and it's the supposedly the last Mission Impossible movies, so I can see why it's making a lot of money, and it does have some good scenes here and there. But yeah, that's current entertainment in just one line. Vaz, it's not awful, but it's not good. If you can get out, that's stuff that's not agenda driven right now. That's what you're going to get. Let's see. Scrolling down. Chugbug says, I like learning more about different comic ages, maybe something on the current dark ages. That'd be a good idea for a video. I have been woefully unprepared for some of my live streams lately. I do apologize, but we got a lot going on, especially with trying to get 4 books done at once, and a late book to say the least. Scrolling down, Vaz also says, RJ, your weekend videos are improvised, or you have a script that you made beforehand. No, they're completely stream of consciousness. That's all they are, Vaz, quite honestly. It's funny because for my more serious videos, I always get some, or I used to anyways, for the first like 3, 4, 5 years of my channel, I would always get someone in the chat saying, you need to turn these into a book, or you need to actually put the text up, because you now have the text function in the side of the screen that you can put up. And I keep saying to them, I don't have text. These aren't written down. Okay. It's just stream of consciousness. That's all it is. I sit down and I talk for probably an hour, and then I pare it down to about 20 minutes, half an hour, usually, because there's long pauses between a lot of what I have to say. Sometimes I have to cut out some things with editing. That's about it. But usually I just put it into my my editing program, and I truncate sound or silence, and it shortens it up to the video length that I usually have. But yeah, it's just stream of consciousness. That's what my live stream or my normal videos usually are. Scrolling down. Jules says the Dark Ages was awesome. Calling the comics of the last 10 years, calling that the comics of the last 10 years would be an insult. I agree completely, Jewel. I agree completely. Let's see, scrolling down, although that's probably what they're going to be called. Pedro says, RJ, an evil angel and a kind of demon. These contradictions are in a way appealing to me. Your opinion about it? Well, demons are evil angels. I mean, they're not evil. They're not evil in their nature. That is to say, the nature of the substance of the angel that exists is still good. He has just chosen to corrupt his good nature by choosing evil and doing evil. And that's you're going back to Christianity 101. That's what demons are. They're angels that rebelled against God. So that's my 2 cents, I guess, Pedro. Scrolling down. Let's see, scrolling down. Not sure what George is talking about, but it's a very interesting comment. He says, I mean, he can't hit a fat guy 20 feet away from him with a machine gun who needs help getting on a helo while he's able to shoot down a supersonic jet with a 9mm. Okay. Yeah, I think you're talking about the Mission Impossible movies. Yes. Yeah, there was a couple of scenes like that in the new Mission Impossible movie. It was like, how in the world did you miss that guy? How in the world? John is here to say goodnight. Hello, goodbye. Time to say goodnight to John. He has work in the morning. He has to get up fairly early, and he deals with, well, I'm not sure. He might have changed exactly what he's doing, but he usually deals with high voltage, so we want him to get his rest. High voltage in New York. Let's see, scrolling down. Michael says, I didn't know you had a live stream. Yes, I do live streams every Wednesday. I don't think I've missed a Wednesday for probably about 2 years now. Even when we had a hurricane come through here, and I don't know, I think maybe I missed one then. It was about 2 years ago that I missed one. But yeah, I do live streams every Wednesday. Usually have them on usually start around 9:30 Eastern. So it depends on what we're doing, because every second week I do comic book team up with John's Longbox here, and that's my live stream. And then the next week we do the comic book team up with John's Longbox on his channel. And then after that stream, I come back here and do my own stream, which is what we're doing now, which is make comics fun again, make comics great again, that kind of thing. Let's see, scrolling down. Let's see, scrolling down. See if we have any more questions before I start going off on a rant. Zach Dan says the sour age. Well, that might be a little better. Let's see, scrolling down. We got some interesting comments here. Which the gauge. Jewel, that is hilarious. We'll call it the gauge. I think that's what I'm going to call it from now on. The modern comic age is the gauge. Although George has his own interpretation of that. That is good, Jewel. I got to use that if you don't mind. Good heavens. Zach Dan says, making bad movies is an investment to lower the bar. Consider how much they cost. I think they're over investing. Which really interesting, Zach Dan, that you bring up that comment, because I did talk about it with John just an hour ago, and I was thinking about it for part of my video that I want to do for Saturday, but it might actually not make it in because I'm trying to keep, trying to pare it down so that they're not so long. But as I was talking to John about it, it's like the fact that everybody in Hollywood has suddenly had their IQ chopped in half. Like the people making movies right now cannot do the minimum basic what you need for a good movie that you could do for decades before this. I mean, I don't care. Go back to the 90s, go back to the 80s, 70s, 60s. Well, 70s, maybe not as much, but 60s, 50s, you go back to the beginning of movies, and people knew how to make movies, and they knew exactly what they were doing. Even if they were experimenting, they had some kind of skill, and it's like that skill is gone. I mean, again, watching the Mission Impossible movie, I kept on thinking to myself, where the heck is the sound editor here? Where the heck is the person who edits the script to say that this entire scene can be cut from a 3-hour movie? It doesn't need to be here. Where in the world is the editor in order to make every fight scene punchy and make it look like there's actual, I don't know, drama going on and actual stakes going on, instead of trying to just film the thing and watch these actors move around slowly, but maybe sped up a little bit? I mean, where are these people? And if the people that are working on editing or sound editing or the soundtrack and all that, they don't know enough that a good movie should do that, then there's something wrong. There's something wrong with how these people think a good movie should be made. So again, it's like you took all the people in Hollywood that actually had some brain cells and could make a good product. Doesn't matter what kind of agenda that they're trying to push. It doesn't matter if they had some kind of hidden things that they want to put in the movies. They knew what they were doing to some extent. Those people are gone, it appears. I don't know. I haven't been to the movies in quite a while. I mean, I went to see Gladiator 2 a couple of, I don't know, months ago. But I hadn't been to the movies since, I don't know, 2020. And even since then, and the 2020 movies weren't great, but still, right now, it's even worse. Scrolling down. George says fallen angels. Yes, we were talking about angels earlier. Zach Dan says angels and demons are sides of a cosmic conflict, not species of spiritual beings. Let's see, scrolling down. Vaz repeats what a few people have been saying. He says, there are still some good comics. Not everything is bad, just that the ratio of good versus bad is heavily tilted. Yeah, as I've been told over and over again, that the new Conan books are really good. And, if I had a working comic store next to me, I would be buying them. I would probably have them on a pull list, but I don't. Not one that I'm going to set foot in anyways. But yeah, there are good comics out there, and agreed, it's heavily tilted. You gotta wade through a whole bunch of crap in order to actually get to some good comics. Scrolling down. Give me 1 second. Just clearing my throat. I apologize for the silence. Scrolling down, scrolling down. Let's see. George says, I don't like how D&D did angels, demons, and devils. There's a very interesting, let's just say, take on angels and demons, both in Marvel and DC in the 1990s. We'll say, I guess it was early 1990s, because you had, what was it? Ghost Rider in 1990s Marvel. I guess it was late 80s, early 1990s. And he was before that, he was a demon, I think in the older books, but in the 90s version of him, he wasn't a demon. He was an angel that got a good angel that got dragged down into hell and tortured. And until he became almost not really insane, but he became, and not even corrupted, but he became, let's just say his justice got turned into vengeance. I suppose that is a bit of a corruption, but still interesting to say the least. Whereas you had a whole bunch of angels. There was an actual angel, supposedly, in DC Comics that was part of the Justice League in the early 1990s. And they had storylines based upon that, all that kind of stuff. So interesting stuff if you want to go back and read it. Let's see, scrolling down. Logic's Finest, how you doing? He says, social ideology activists masquerading as writers have ruined all media, not just comics. Until they're replaced completely, nothing will change. Hoping against hope is a waste of time. Well, I agree, Logic's Finest. I quite agree. Their whole point is everything is systemic. Why? Because they want to take over systems. That's it. And they have taken over the systems of entertainment. And you're right. They have to die. I've said that a number of times. So I agree. Ryan says, RJ, are you ever going to market and do interviews to promote your comics on mainstream media? I don't think my comics have that big a reach, quite honestly. If they take off at some point, sure, I guess. I mean, it would take, I don't know, it would take a large jump in advertising for me in order to actually have any kind of mainstream presence like that, like some giant YouTube channel that has over 1 million subscribers saying, go and check out this guy and his comics because they're good. But whether or not my comics are that good is another question. I think they're that good, but I'm biased, of course. But yeah, will I ever do interviews and promote my comics in mainstream media? I might. But again, mainstream media to me, if you're actually talking mainstream media, would be like setting up a table at a Comic-Con, or go down and see John in New York and go to the New York City Comic-Con and set up a table. That would be the promotion of mainstream media that I might get to at some point. But that would be about it. Mainstream media besides anything with a indie tint to it, at the very least, is just going to die soon, if you ask me. So I'm not entirely sure if it would actually reach any kind of an audience. I did try to, Ryan, I did try to do a little bit of that, in the fact that I paid for an advertisement in Alterna. So there was a paid advertisement in Alterna Comics for, I can't remember which book it was. It might have been Thomas Valley #1. I think it was Thomas Valley #1, but I never really saw any sales from that. So I think mainstream, advertising right now is not going to cut it for comics. That's why I advertise basically on YouTube. Scrolling down. George says, we can ask the same question with editors in RJ's. I mean, Rogue Savage Land issue #3 had spelling mistakes, for instance. Okay. Well, I mean, I know that my last book had spelling mistakes, and I depended way too much on my editor. And I should not have. And I need to get a more professional editor. I agree. If we ever going to put out Valiant Heroes again, we will fix the spelling mistakes. I will tell you that. But the difference is, I'm a guy working out of my extra room, whereas you have Marvel Comics, which is run by Disney, which is one of the largest entertainment corporations in the world. So you have editors that can't fix spelling mistakes. You got yourself a problem. That being said, George, I've done a number of videos, probably 2 years ago now, if not more, where I cover a Marvel podcast. Well, actually several, where their editors are actually part of the part of the podcast. Excuse me, part of the podcast where they're talking about their job, and their job, they say, is not to touch the stories as they're given to them. What they do is they try to make them into more palatable and well told stories. But if the writer says, no, no, don't touch it, then the writer has the last word, basically, is what they said, which is idiotic, if you ask me. An editor should make you afraid. Again, working with several editors who have had published books in the mainstream, some of them, and having them edit my book, an editor should make you afraid, should make you feel queasy to your stomach looking at your work going, oh my heavens, I have to change so much about this. Your natural inclination will be, no, no, I have an entirely good reason why it's that way. And then you sit with it for a couple of weeks and go, yeah, my editor's right. Scrolling down. Abraxas, you have a very interesting comment. I agree. Current movies feel pieced together. Yeah, they feel spliced together. Current movies do feel like that. Like they should not have one scene come after another, which is funny because I always go back to the Aristotelian idea of storytelling. And for me, one of the core tenets of Aristotelian storytelling is that it can't be episodic. And what he means by episodic is that it needs to have a natural flow and rhythm. If you can take part of the story and switch it up with another part of the story in their order, then you're making an episodic story. Excuse me, one second. Then you're making an episodic story. That's basically what he's saying. And that's what current movies feel like. You're right. They feel like they're pieced together, they're spliced together, and it doesn't matter what scene comes before what scene. And that's an episodic way of telling a story, and it's a bad way of telling a story. I go back to Aristotle because honestly, although it wasn't everybody saying, hey, let's look at Aristotle, he has the correct way to do it, and we'll base our stories off of that. That's not how it worked, but it's basically what happened for the last 2,000 years for good storytelling. Logic says, talented writers have been pushed out for no talent hacks. They have zero life experience, zero ability to craft a story, so they write their limited life experiences and ideologies. Not only that, Logic's Finest, again, one of the videos that I did a while ago, probably 4 or 5 years ago, and that I bring up every once in a while, is the Marika Tamaki interview, where she basically talks about experiences as being anything that you come in contact with. So much so that for one of these more quote unquote progressive writers, watching a television show is as much experience as something that happens in your life. So this is why you would see, 4 or 5 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, all these basically Buffy references and ripoffs in comic books and television shows and all this kind of thing, because the writers themselves think that watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer and experiencing it as you watch it is the same as experience in the real life. Honestly, that's what Marika Tamaki started talking about. I was like, holy, what in the world are you on? That's not the way to write a good story. Yeah. And I mean, I think that woman actually knows how to write. She can write a good story. And I think my video was actually, what was it titled? The Best Writer That Will Never Write a Good Comic. It was something like that. But yeah, no talent hacks. Definitely. It's as we used to say a number of years ago, they're like the Marvel and DC and all these entertainment providers are basically trying to collect Pokemon cards. It's like, here's a marginalized group that we don't have one of. Collect those people and give them a job writing something. Let's see. Scrolling down. Zach Dan says, good point, RJ. They've done a bunch of these Mission Impossible movies. One would think the crew would be experienced by now, even if the concept is repetitive like a Godzilla movie. The formula works. Yeah, it's not, I mean, it's more basic than even formula. I'm not even talking about the story. I'm talking about how to put the story together in a palatable way. I don't know how to put it, but again, we'll go back to the Aristotelian idea of storytelling. It's the idea that part of a good story or a good piece of art, he doesn't even limit this to story. He says a good piece of art has to be one which is, what's the word he uses? I have to translate it in my head from the Greek. I think proportional, basically. He's talking about proportionality in the fact that the human eye has to take in the entire thing and it makes it proportional. And once you can, if you get to the end of the movie and it's been so long since the first of the movie that you forgot what happened at the first of the movie and so can't understand what's going on at the end of the movie, to me, that's not a proportional way to tell a story. And I could use many other probably better examples. But again, you have this movie, which it was almost 3 hours long. And if you had edited it correctly, you would not only have made it much more palatable, much more exciting, much more on the edge of your seat, like most Mission Impossible movies are, you would also cut it down to probably 2 hours. So yeah, it's the basics. It's not even good storytelling. I'm going to get into the good storytelling and the bad storytelling when I do my weekend video, but it at some point, it's not even good storytelling. It's basic ability to, like we talked about in a couple of questions ago with George here, that with all the spelling mistakes, it's like these people don't even have the basic ability to spell correctly, and they're trying to be editors. And these people don't have the basic ability to splice together film correctly, and they're trying to be film editors. Manny, how you doing, Manny? Manny says, RJ, do you think solo blockbuster movies could make a comeback? Well, they're going to have to. At some point, they're going to have to, Manny. Unless, I don't know. I can't see Hollywood completely dying. I mean, it looks like it's going to die because it just won't go back to actually making good movies. But again, I watched all of the trailers before Mission Impossible this last Saturday, and I don't think that any of the trailers that I watched were a unique movie, quite honestly. Not a one. You had the second Megan movie that was coming out, which is a horror movie. You had Lilo and Stitch, which is a remake. You had several other franchises that were coming out that basically it's like a number 5 movie or number 6. I don't even remember most of them, but I don't think there was one movie they showed a trailer for that was actually an original content movie, that someone just came up with an original story and said, hey, let's make that movie. Not a one. But yeah, solo blockbusters is what Hollywood was based off of for the last 30 years. I mean, the fact that you have all of this Terminator, I always come back to Terminator because Terminator was not supposed to be a movie that was going to spark an entire universe. It wasn't. It was supposed to be a standalone movie that some guys, James Cameron, I think, if I remember correctly, said, let's make this. It's going to be fun, and it is a good idea, and I want to make a story out of it. We'll do the best we can. And they sparked an entire, well, the second movie was spectacular because they had much more money. The third and the fourth, yeah, not so much. But they, again, it's what they're doing now is based on the backs of actual solo blockbuster movies. They're standing on they're standing on the shoulders of those giants. All right, scrolling down. We'll see if I can get through some more of these comments because, again, today I want to focus on the chat. thank everybody in the chat for coming and focus on you guys because I haven't been doing so for the last little while. How you doing? Cushion is here, and he has been here for a couple of my live streams. I think he's been enjoying them on his drives. He says, do you have any suggestions for Gothic fantasy comics? I've been going through Vampire Hunter D books and manga and would like to hear of others. Oh, so you want suggestions for reading Gothic horror fantasy? Okay, well, obviously, if you're talking about Vampire Hunter D, Berserk, everybody would say, go look at Berserk. To me, I would say, go look at Claymore. Claymore, in my opinion, and, people probably pummel me in the comments or want to when I say this, I think Claymore is better than Berserk, quite honestly. It's very hard to read if you're going to go back to the manga, just because the characters are a group of women who have basically superpowers, which they gain from infusing them with some kind of demon body part. But it makes them all look the same. They have basically slightly different haircuts, but they all wear the basic same uniform. So it's really hard when you read the black and white manga to tell who's who. And even if you go watch the anime for it, everybody's got blonde hair too. So it's really difficult. You have to pay a lot of attention to names. Anyways, those would be my straight up first go-tos for that, for Gothic horror. Besides that, I don't know any off the top of my head that I could think of. You want to go read Gotham by Gaslight, perhaps. That's Batman tracking down what? Jack the Ripper. That's the only thing I can think of right off the top of my head. Unless you want to go back to actual penny stories. Those would be the only things that I could come up with off the top of my head. Let's see. Logic Finest says, instead of creating, they destroy characters or have a beloved character pass the mantle to an insufferable, obnoxious a-hole. The stories they can write ad nauseum. That story they can write ad nauseum. Yes, indeed. Agreed. Again, Logic, I agree with what you're saying. Scrolling down. There's a lot of cross talk in the chat, so I'm trying to scroll past that just so I can get to any questions that are for me or statements. Logic says, experienced writers are forced to try and make their own projects. On the rare occasion they are allowed to make a mainstream project, they are forced to make woke concessions somewhere in it. Well, yes, today, definitely. Again, agreed completely. Scrolling down. See if I have any more comments here. Oh, I thought I was getting to the bottom of the chat. I wasn't anywhere close to it. I have this thing. I don't know if anybody else does this, but when I'm trying to get to the bottom of the chat, it just jumps automatically, and there's another 100 chat messages for me. Scrolling down. Excuse me. A very scratchy throat tonight. Scrolling down. Jules says, is Rogue Savage Land the comic where she is a cave woman in a bikini? Yeah, basically. That's basically it. There was like 2 issues of X-Men back in, 1989, where she was that character. And so they decided to bring back something, and that's what they come up with. Again, it might have something to do with the fact that they're trying to bring the X-Men into the MCU. I'm not entirely sure. Scrolling down. See if there's any more comments for me. Zach Dan does have a good comment. He says, it's one thing to get some book knowledge, but it's far different from experience. Yeah, experiential knowledge is far different. I've learned that from making comics myself and having to ship them out myself. Scrolling down. Let's see. Scrolling down. Leonidas, how you doing? Welcome back to the chat. He says, hey, RJ, what do you think about perpetual comics like Marvel Should they reboot every couple of decades or so? I kind of think comics like that is something that right now no one should even try. John and I were just talking about this over on his channel an hour ago or so. Neither of us really think that constant reboots are a good thing. I honestly think that the Crisis on Infinite Earths did fix a whole lot of continuity, and they should have left it at that. For my way of thinking, and this is what I do with my books, is that you have sort of a pass down of a mantle from one character to another, but powers are different, and it's, you know, that character goes away and dies. And in my books, you die, you're dead. I'm sorry for all those people who want the ostrich to come back, but in my books, you die, you're dead. You're not coming back. And the thing is that they should have done that probably in the 90s, early 2000s with a lot of Marvel characters, in my opinion. And again, I don't know how well this would have worked out, but Peter Parker should have died in the 90s or in the early 2000s, and his son or his daughter should have taken over. I would have no problem with a legacy character like a female Spider-Man being the daughter of Peter Parker and Mary Jane Parker, taking over for Spider-Man. If he's dead, he's dead. I mean dead. Out of the picture, not coming back. They should have done that for so many characters. There are characters that don't have that problem. Like, let's say Captain America, he doesn't age, or he ages very slowly, or Wolverine, who, you know, has been around since the beginning of the Hudson's Bay Company. Even before that, you know, because of his mutant abilities, people like that. Superman would age differently because of his powers. Yeah, sure. You can continue on those characters in a different sort of way, but some characters should die. They should just die and not come back. And I know that they're trying to make money, and Spider-Man is their big money maker. But honestly, I think if they had rejuvenated, let's just say Peter Parker had a kid and he was a boy with Mary Jane, and he became a redhead Spider-Man, and his father died in some spectacular manner within the comics, that would have saved Marvel Comics. We would not have the horrific Marvel Comics that we have today. That's my opinion, though. That's about it. Scrolling down. Let's see, scrolling down. Scrolling down. This is the Fourth Age, just in case you're wondering. I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce that. DJROCCAL. You are on the Fourth Age. We talk about comics and a lot of current cultural pitfalls. Let's put it that way. And especially, well, my channel is centered around the idea of a traditional hero. Scrolling down. Oh, yes. There we go. George says, the trailers for my Mission Impossible movies were the Smurfs. Again, not the first time they made a Smurfs movie, not original characters. Megan 2.0. Again, that's a sequel. Naked Gun, which is a remake. And a Western with Pierce Brosnan and Samuel Jackson. I didn't see the Pierce Brosnan and Samuel Jackson one. But yes, though, besides the Pierce Brosnan and Samuel Jackson one, those were the ones I saw as well. Yeah. And again, none of those are new material at all. George also says, the only Gothic comic for me that I can think of is The Crow. Let's see. Scrolling down. DJ says, going to check out the World War II myth video and come back. You know what's funny? I was just telling this to John. Usually, well, it used to be back in the day when, you know, Comicsgate was in full swing, my videos would get somewhere between 8,000 to 10,000 views. Over the last year or two, maybe 3, that's severely been truncated. Maybe it's because YouTube is going with a different algorithm. I don't know. Usually I can eke out 2,000, maybe 4 to 5 for a video. If my video does really good, I'll get over 10,000. But the World War II video that I just did for last week has jumped in 1 week to 20,000 views. The one of Why the Woke Hate Christianity has jumped to 30,000 views and is still outpacing the one that I did last week. It's like, wow. I don't know. exactly why these two videos jumped out the way that they did, but I'm going to have to actually shift my focus because it looks like people want to actually have this kind of content. And I'm one of those channels that can actually pivot and make that kind of content. I don't think, some channels, I love Wes over at Thinking Critical, but I don't think his channel can pivot like that. I used to listen to a lot of diversity in comics, which became Comics Matter. Not so much anymore, but his channel just can't pivot like that. My channel can. And so let's see if I can pivot with some more videos like that. Scrolling down. George also says, agree, Claymore is better than Berserk. There we go. I have a supporter on that. Let's see, scrolling down. Zach Dan says, I loved Claymore the anime. The only real problem I have with Claymore is the ending. And it's to say that is really, I don't know. I think it's the culmination of the ending because it's how the entire thing works. Because to me, this is the Claymore is the anime and the manga that actually alerted me to the very massive difference between Eastern and Western storytelling. Why? Because it's basically set in a medieval Germany, which is an alternate reality or an alternate Earth. It's not really on our planet, but the entire planet seems to be in a medieval Germany, late medieval Germany. Anyways, it's set in that European setting, but the story and the basis of how the powers work for the characters is very, very Eastern in the way that it does it. Which, if you look at it again, everybody always tells me in the comments that I have no idea how Buddhism works. Okay, fine. I'm just giving you a Westerner's take on Buddhism. It's basically like a giant battery. And so you can tap into that giant battery, which is the universe, and get a infinite amount of power from it. And that's why you have these characters that can constantly level up all the time. Hence Dragon Ball Z, right? Which, you go back to stories like Buddha and the monkey, with the Monkey King, right? That's where I come up with a lot of this stuff, reading stories like that. But yeah, Claymore falls into that pitfall at the end of the story, which is constant leveling up of its characters, which is basically the tapping into the universe. And since the universe is so infinite, but not really, I just use that word to describe it. It's an infinite battery of power that you can tap into. Therefore, you can constantly level up. Anyway, I did love, again, the anime and the manga. Let's see, scrolling down. George says, I wonder why they never made a season 2 of Claymore. I mean, the manga ended, so they don't need to do filler. Because, well, basically, the way that I understand they anime sequels is whether or not there was enough people to warrant a sequel to it, enough people that are going to pay for it. And they need large audiences because we're just watching it as bystanders, George, as people people who were never intended to have as an audience to watch it. Their main audience is in Japan. And if they can't get that Japanese audience to support it, then it's not going to happen. Batum would be another one. I would say, why wouldn't they make a second season of that? I really liked the first season of Batum, but no, it just wasn't going to happen. Scrolling down. Calliope is here. How you doing, Calliope? Calliope says, I just tuned in and with about 12 words, RJ is talking about Claymore. Yeah. Let's see, scrolling down. Let's see. Jules says, YouTube gave me a really good trailer for a race movie with Brad Pitt. I did see that. I don't know if it was on YouTube or not. The premise, I gather, is that Chad, old white American guy versus resentful against white people, black youth living in Europe. Yeah, I really didn't pay attention to the commercial when I ran across it, but now that you say it, that's exactly what it is. uh, scrolling down, scrolling down, scrolling down. Logic, I don't know what you're talking about, but you're talking about Star Trek, so I'm going to put this up. Star Trek is set 500 years in the future, but made in 2023. So the snarky, head half-shaved, non-binary, man-hating lesbians all talk like 26-year-old libs from San Francisco. Writers write themselves. Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely Logic. Again, going back to a video I did a long time ago, probably 3-4 years ago now. It was a Marvel podcast where they took 4 women, I think it was, and they said, these are the next generation of great writers for Marvel Comics. And one of them was writing Thanos at that time. I can't remember who it was. Off the top of my head, I don't remember. But she said, yes, when I write Thanos, Thanos is a gay black woman. Literally, that's what she said. She made no bones about it. That's who Thanos is when she writes Thanos, because that's who she is. So yeah, 100%. You are correct. Logic's finest. Let's see. Scrolling down. Leonidas says, hey, RJ, what do you think about Occidental manga? Is a dream of mine to make manga anime based one American and European style. Yeah, I really don't know. Let's just put it this way. For manga, I'm not entirely sure. I will not, quite honestly, I will not watch any anime that is basically Western based. I just won't. Because, again, they have the message somewhere in there, but they're just inferior. Like, there's only one that I actually got through that I think was an American based anime, and I can't remember the name. Evan, I don't know, remember what it was. It was like Evanescence or something like that. Anyways, it was set in a faux World War II where the woman lost both her arms in an explosion, and then she was given mechanical arms. Someone in the chat, I'm sure, knows exactly what the name of this is. That's the only American anime that I actually thought pulled off anything close to Japanese anime. They just make them different in that way. Now, for manga, not entirely sure. You do have a lot of manga artists right now. And like, I have a manga artist working for me from who lives in Japan. And there's a lot of manga artists right now that are from South America instead of being from Japan. So there is a chance for manga. I don't think for anime. I just don't. Let's see. Oops, I just went straight to the end of my chat. So I got to go back up, scrolling up. Let's see, scrolling down. I'm just going to leave. I should have put something up in the background besides Cardinal, but yeah, Cardinal's pretty face is a good thing to have in the background, if you ask me. Scrolling down. Ryan says, RJ, who is your favorite philosopher? Thomas Aquinas. That's an easy one. He's more of a theologian than a philosopher, I guess. If you want to go with pure philosophy, of course, that would be Aristotle. But if you want to talk about current philosophers, we'll say current day. We won't say alive. Go back to Josef Pieper. He's a German who basically was a professor in Germany while the Nazis were taking over. And he basically had to tone down what he wanted to say was going on with his country, and then fled to England, if I remember correctly, and published a lot of stuff in German after that. His stuff is only now in the last 20 years, 15 to 20 years. 20 is probably pushing it. In the last 15 to 20 years is really the first time that his stuff has been translated in full into English. It's great stuff, especially when you want to talk about the heroic virtues. Scrolling down. Let's see. Scrolling down. I'm actually going to throw this up. Logic says, there was never a need to reboot comic characters. The characters are timeless. Just keep telling culturally relevant stories. Marvel Reborn was the beginning of the end. I started walking away. Logic's finest. I don't know. you must be a clone of me, because that's exactly where I walked away. Marvel Reborn is exactly where I walked away. After that, I did not buy new comics. I bought comic collections. Quite honestly, that was the beginning of the end. You are quite right. Vaz says, RJ, a few decades ago, Wes, Thinking Critical, made a list of stories that ruined the characters. What do you think of his list? I don't remember that list. Any of you think that I don't know if he should have added anything to it or not, because I don't remember the list. Wes comes up with a lot of good ideas. Wes is a great guy. Wes knows probably more than anyone in this, we'll say, adjacent comic gate sphere about new comics right now, and still has a critical eye towards them. But at the same time, he puts out so much material that I can't consume it all. Scrolling down. Scrolling down. Let's see. Jules says, Thinking Critical can just do what he's been doing, which is talk about comics. He doesn't have to talk about the comic war. Yeah, agreed. Well, that's his model. Again, go over to Thinking Critical. If you want to know something about current comics, go over to Wes. George says, RJ, the ending of Claymore was an anime ending because they caught up to the manga and it's different in the manga. Yeah. No, I was talking about the anime ending, George. You're exactly right. Scrolling down. Another ending like that would be, Dimension W. Dimension W, I think, was a really good anime, and it just fell down in the last couple of episodes. It was horrible by the last couple of episodes. The first episodes were great. It was spectacular. I thought it was going to be great. Into the middle, it was still good. But when it hit the end, it was like, how did you just rushed through that entire ending? That should have been an entire season in itself, and you ruined the whole thing. Anyways, scrolling down. Scrolling down. Michael says, anime back in the day didn't follow the manga. Only in more recent years do anime stories follow the manga. I mean, I'm saying, like, you look at Berserk, that followed the manga, as far as I know, right? What else? I don't know. To me, a lot of them did follow the manga. What is the one I'm thinking of? Names just elude me whenever I need them the most. But I think that Murder Princess was a manga, and it only got one season, but it was fairly close. Let's say, what else? Heroic Tales I can't remember the name of the actual book. I think it was a manga. Anyways, yeah, I was probably thinking of Murder Princess. Scrolling down. Jules says, medieval German world. This Claymore is the year 843 in Hitler's 1,000-year Reich after defeating the industrial technological menace. But it looks like, I'd say it looks like medieval. That's what it looks like. Yeah, you would know more than I probably, Jewel, about the lore of Claymore. So if that's what you say it is, then I don't know the difference. It's been a while. We'll just put it that way. Let's see. Scrolling down. Symbiote 5. Sorry. Joss Whedon is patient zero. A bunch of hacks tried to copy his style poorly. Agreed. Hacks were trying to copy his style at the end of the Buffy the Vampire Slayer basic storylines for the last couple of seasons, and then the spin-offs for that. Yeah, they were trying to copy his style long and ever ago, and it never worked. Let's see. Scrolling down. Leonidas says, RJ, do you think characters being all together in one universe, making them unable to advance their stories, kind of puts them in a cage of a weird present that cannot advance? Well, again, I think that there should be a time limit to characters, quite honestly. I think that characters should die and stay dead, but I also think that they should be in one universe. For my money, I would like to see a closed universe. This idea of multi-universes, that's just, quite honestly, part of postmodernism. Tony says, RJ, have you ever seen Michael Mann's 1984 epic The Keep? Probably back in 1984. uh, yeah, that feels like something like Claymore. Tony, if you're asking, it's very German, and you got a mix of supernatural, outer space stuff, demonic, and the medieval feel to it, if I remember correctly from The Keep. It also has some really good acting in it and some really bad acting in it. So yeah, I have, Tony. But it was a long time ago. Let's see, scrolling down. See if there's any more comments for me. We've been going for over an hour, so I'm going to try to get to the end of the comments. Scrolling down. Ryan says, RJ, the success of your recent Saturday videos is why I think you can market to a mainstream audience. Your knowledge and educational degrees, along with your delivery, give you amazing credibility. I don't think that's the case, right? I think I touched some nerves. That's about it. I would not think of myself as terribly educated. I just pushed through. Yes, I have several degrees, but again, I just pushed through to the best of my ability. Yeah. And I think I did touch some nerves. And I think that here's the thing, Ryan, I think that the narrative is changing. And a lot of us here on YouTube are still working with the old narrative. And every time it used to be that videos where I'd put woke in the title would do 20,000, would be those videos that would jump up all of a sudden. But not anymore, because no one cares anymore. And they want to talk about something new. And I think it's because they want to build something new. And the point of building something new is to talk about starting to build something new. As funny as that sounds, you got to make blueprints before you can actually build a house. So, that's what we're doing now. And that's where I think the future is going to come from. Good videos. And I'm going to try to do more of that. It's always hit and miss for me because, again, I just do stream of consciousness stuff. Escaflowne? I don't know, Michael. I can't remember. It might have been. Not entirely sure. Tom is here. How you doing, Tom? Tom said, someone mentioned F1. I'm hesitantly excited for that movie because it's coming from a writer and director of Top Gun Maverick. Could be. Violet Evergarden. Thank you, Mike. Yes, that's it. Let's see. Scrolling down. Tony says, RJ, what is the better Robert E. Howard Conan adaptation, the American version or the Franco-Belgian versions? I don't really like the Franco-Belgian versions. It has to be an American version, quite honestly, because look at Robert E. Howard himself. He had problems, but he was very much, I want to be an American tough guy. That's what he wanted to be in his life. And that's the way his stories go. And he was American and his stories are American. He talks about Europe. His stories are set in a setting where it's basically every great European empire stuck on one map. Doesn't matter what time they came from. And so he's given an American take on European stories and European history and culture, but it's very much an American take. So I think the adaptation that is the best is the American version. Scrolling down. I have a lot of comments to get through before I get to the end. Let's see. Scrolling down. Scrolling down. Jewel says, those Conan comics from Ablaze are awful. I'm assuming that's what you mean by European. I'm not entirely sure that's what he meant by European, but again, I would say the European take, because they are those Ablaze comics were published in Europe because the trademark or the copyright for Conan has expired in Europe, so that's why they're able to do so. And yeah, I bought them. They weren't the greatest. I agreed, Jewel. They weren't bad. They were certainly better than the Marvel stuff that was coming out at the time, but still, that's not saying a whole lot. Scrolling down. Scrolling down. Jewel, I'm not entirely sure what you're referring to. What are these? crowns with numbers next to them in the chat. Got me. I've been doing live streams for years now, and I couldn't tell you. But again, I have, as I said before, Amish levels of technical skill. Let's see. Scrolling down. Pedro brings up another good one. Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. There you go. Zaktan says Murder Princess was enjoyable. It does fall down at places with the sort of like chibi characters, but still, I like the concept of it. Scrolling down. Jules says, RJ, no, I don't know anything about that Japanese comic cartoon. I was just making a joke. Okay. Let's see. Scrolling down. Logic, I agree again, says multiverse is the ultimate lazy plot device. It's the holy grail for the untalented, woke writers with zero life experience who can only write themselves. I did an entire video about this when, the Spider-Verse movie came out, and also that movie which people say that they really liked, which was, I don't know, what the heck was it? I can't remember off the top of my head. It was basically it had the kid in it from Temple of Doom. What the heck is the name of that movie? Anyways, but yeah, the multiverse is basically meta-modernism. I did an entire video on meta-modernism. It's the postmodernist, it's the next evolution of postmodernism, basically to say there exists an infinite number of universes where every choice has been made. So even though your choices don't matter, they matter so much that they created an entire universe to try to get you to think that the nihilistic underpinning of postmodernism actually makes you feel good about being absolutely nothing. It's weird. Just go back to my video on meta-modernism. Let's see. Scrolling down. See if I can get to the bottom of the chat, because I've been going for over an hour. Usually I like to stop at an hour. Logic also says, RJ, a 5'1" woman weighing 95 pounds, soaking wet, can't beat up a man who is 6'3", 240 pounds, and a trained killer. That's too far beyond the pale for me. Fiction has to fundamentally mirror reality. Again, if they have superpowers, I could see that. Again, go back to something like Claymore. They have superpowers. They're a bunch of little girls, a bunch of short women that are taking on demons that are sometimes the size of a mountain. Why? Because they have superpowers. Sometimes that they could rival Superman in some of the superpowers that they have. But yeah, I agree completely. That's why some of the characters in my universe act the way that they do. We have Phantasm. She can turn intangible, but she realizes that the moment she turns tangible, she could be completely obliterated by many of the people on the battlefield. So she has a problem, and part of that problem is psychological, and it's the fact that she doesn't want to be tangible for a lot of the time. And it's a thing of safety. Again, with my other character, which is Disc, she's completely overpowered because that kind of creation of dimensional portals basically is completely overpowered. But at the same time, she wears chainmail underneath her big bulky cloak because she knows that she's just a person underneath, even though she has all this power, and a stray rock coming from a battle of super beings could easily end her life, things like that. So I think it can be worked into the story logic. Scrolling down, Tony says, RJ, what are your thoughts on Cowboy Bebop if you've watched it? Yeah, I would rather Samurai Champloo was much better than Cowboy Bebop, if you ask me. That's my unpopular take. We'll leave it at that. I liked Samurai Champloo. I never really got into Cowboy Bebop, so we'll put it that way. Scrolling down. See if we can get to the end of the chat. I think I've gotten close to it. Scrolling down. Zaktan is absolutely right. He says the word is verisimilitude. The story has to be self-consistent enough to be believable, at least on its own premises. Exactly. That's what when they were making the original 1981, was it Superman movie? They had that printed in big bold letters, I think, over one of the main places where everybody could see. It was verisimilitude, so that everybody knew that this story had to have its own internal consistency so that everyone would be able to look at it and go, it's not one of those campy old Superman shows or movies. It looked like real life and could have happened in real life, just changing a few things. Vaz says, RJ, do you like the multiverse? You don't like the multiverse, then you probably hate 0 Hour Crisis in Time. If I remember correctly, it brought back the multiverse in DC Comics. Yes, you are 100% correct, Vaz. I hated 0 Hour. I did. And I think it screwed up Crisis on Infinite Earths and everything that got put into it. Tony says, RJ, I've been on a Golden Age kick recently. What are your thoughts on Golden Age DC and Marvel? I don't think there's any Golden Age Marvel that exists. And Marvel didn't come along to the Silver Age. But Golden Age DC, again, I would go with John from John's Longbox. Go back to, again, they've ruined the character of the old character of, what is it, Green Lantern, but I really like that character. For John, he would say go back to the old Captain Marvel, Shazam. Do you want Golden Age, good Golden Age characters, good Golden Age comics? Go back to stuff like that. But there's a lot of comics there's a lot of good comic sites right now that would, I don't know, I can't pull it up right now, but there is at least one site I know of that I have bookmarked, which has scans of old Golden Age comics, because basically they can do that now. Their copyright or their trademark has expired, and there are comics that you have no recollection and no connection to anything in the present day, and there's some good comics there. But again, you'd have to go through and find out. It's basically a comic archive. If I wish I could remember, but again, that's why I bookmark things, so I don't have to remember. All right, scrolling down, and I think I got to the bottom of the chat. And yes, I have. Well, thank you very much. I'll leave the last word to Tony there. And I'll say thank you to everyone for showing up. Listen to me ramble. I just wanted to talk to the chat for for an hour. I did again with another hour over John's Longbox. But again, I felt like I was ignoring the chat for a couple of weeks, and I very much appreciate this chat. You guys are here week after week. I appreciate it, and I have fun with you guys every week that you're here. And I wanted to give you guys some more screen time than I've been giving you. So thank you very much once again for everybody who's shown up and listened to me ramble and just talk to the chat for an entire hour and 15 minutes. And with that, I'm going to put up the trailer for Fade Blue one more time, and that will be my outro. The link for Fade Blue is in the chat, in the description of this video. It is my new books that are coming out and will be available digitally. And it is basically Indiana Jones crossed with film noir. And it's going to be black and white with a little bit of blue thrown in. That is very much the film noir feel to it. And I'll leave you with that. And thank you once again for everybody who's shown up in the chat. And I'll see you all again next week. Bye.